Welcome back to the Neuro Clinic, everybody. Thanks for joining us again. I'm one of your hosts, Dr. Oliver. We're going to be working on Dr. Hatch today with some sacodometry, and I'll explain exactly why we use that and what it is. Come on in. Say hi, Dr. Hatch.
Hello, everyone.
So, come on over here. We're going to show you, this is the little unit that we're talking about here. This is a piece of equipment that's actually manufactured by a company in Poland called Ober Technologies. And I believe, correct me if I'm wrong, Dr. Hatch, but this is a piece of equipment initially used for pilots. They were analyzing the pilot's ability to execute a fast eye movement. So, by definition, when I say the word saccade, that's what we're talking about, is a fast eye movement. This piece of equipment, it's not currently approved by the FDA as a diagnostic tool. We can't technically say that this is a diagnostic tool. We find it very helpful, the information that it gives, and so we're going to talk about that as we break down an analysis essentially of what the sacodometer gives to us. What I want to do right now is show you how it works, and I'm going to set up a test with Dr. Hatch here. Before I get into that, again, I'm just going to just repeat, saccades are fast eye movements, and so what we have Dr. Hatch do is we're going to have him put on that headband. As you can see here, there are 3 little sensors on the front that emit a laser. The lasers are used as targets for Dr. Hatch to look at, and so I'll instruct him, and you'll be able to hear my instructions to Dr. Hatch about how we use this piece of equipment. So what I'm going to do here is turn it on. Dr. Hatch, if you could position that for me. Go ahead and put that on. Now the sensors that actually analyze and measure and record all these rapid eye movements or fast eye movements are on the inside, so they're facing Dr. Hatch's eyeballs here. And what I'll show you is as we start to run this test is we're able to turn it on and display the targets on the wall. And you can see here what we want to make sure, first of all, is that this is positioned properly and make sure that it's lined up ideally with Dr. Hatch's eyeballs so that we get a really pure, clean reading. We asked, I'll take a look behind Dr. Hatch and make sure those targets are level. Now that I know that the targets are well positioned, you can be anywhere between 1 to 3 meters away from the wall. And the only instruction is, as we start this test, I'm going to ask Dr. Hatch to just follow the targets as they move. And so, the important part to begin here is that you'll see is we do a calibration. So the sacodometer is going to register 10 movements to the right, 10 movements to the left. Okay, and I'm able to see if this is going to be a clean calibration or not. And if not, there's some things I can change on here, like the gain and some other technical stuff with the sacodometer, in order to make sure that we get a really good clean reading. And it's looking great so far. 14, 15. As we get to 20, those are the 10 movements to the right, 10 movements to the left. We can see here that Dr. Hatch is ready to move forward with the exam. So if you look here on the piece of equipment, it shows the units of calibration, 79, 74. It's ready to move on to the dynamic trials. And now Dr. Hatch is actually performing the test. So as you see, this is a simple gap saccade. Now to show you exactly what the laser is doing on the wall, we shut the lights out. Dr. Hatch is still able to look at the targets as they bounce from side to side. This is what we call a simple gap saccade. Okay, and we don't need to necessarily go in depth of what a gap saccade is. With this unit, we're able to measure other types of saccades, like an express saccade, anti-saccades, and we get really, really valuable information because there's specific parts of your brain that are used in order to execute a fast eye movement. So that's why we love this tool, because we're able to get so much valuable information about how well Dr. Hatch is able to execute a fast eye movement. So the sacodometer is a piece of equipment that we've been using since, November of last year. Okay, we purchased the piece of equipment in the summertime. It was delivered in November, right around Thanksgiving. We were thrilled to have it come in, and we've been using it ever since in our clinic, and we've had invaluable information given to us from this unit. So this is one thing as a new patient, when you come in and work with us at the Neuro Clinic here in our office, this is something we're going to do with everybody because it is so helpful. Let's go on into the treatment room, and we're going to bring up Dr. Hatch's test and talk about how we kind of evaluate and break down an analysis of a sacodometer reading. Okay, so now we're back in Dr. Hatch's treatment room here, taking a peek at his test, and this is what we're analyzing in the exam room with the sacodometer. A couple important things that we look at here. You can see that there's two separate colors. Okay, the left generating saccadic. Well, let's talk about this one first. So experiments to the left. Okay, we're going to take those away. So experiments to the left, experiments to the right. Because we were just moving in the horizontal plane, looking left and looking right, we get these two different colors. And what it tells us is how well the generating saccadic parts of the brain, or the parts of the brain that are in charge of making that fast eye movement possible. So for example, a fast eye movement looking quickly to the left is a right generated saccade. A fast eye movement generated moving to the right is a left generated saccade. So we can simply look at this and say, in simple terms, green is left brain, red is right brain. And so that's what we look at here. Now, as you can see up here, we're looking at 4 different profiles. This first profile is the position profile. There's a lot that goes into the way that we analyze, and we're not necessarily going to do that right now, but we can tell you it's important that we analyze the position, because when a target comes into your field of view, you should be able to look at that target quickly and efficiently and maintain a proper gaze hold on that target. Just like in the room with Dr. Hatch and how he was testing there, he should be able to look at that laser as it registers on the wall. And so position is very important. Next, we'll move on and just take a look at latency. This is important to us because it tells us how much time is it taking for your brain to actually start that eye movement towards the target once you realize that there's a target that you want to look at. And so what we want to see is all these underneath 200 milliseconds, okay? If you have some experiments that are over 200 milliseconds, it's significant to us. So we're able to look at latencies here. Now we're going to take a peek at the velocity profile. This is something that's important because once the eyes start to move, it's important to know how fast they're actually going once the saccade is initiated. So we look at the velocity profile to get a really good idea of the speed or how well he's moving. So again, in each one of these profiles, as you can see, Dr. Hatch is showing us, you can isolate left versus right. Then we look at the phase profile. And again, the variables are just different. We're looking at this graph with velocities in degrees per second to position in degrees. And it's just another profile that we look at that shows us what we call the phase. So these 4 profiles are extremely helpful in allowing us to get the data that we need. And remember again, right now currently this is not certified by the FDA as a diagnostic tool. We use it as a helpful tool in our office because it gives us really good information, but we don't use it to diagnose specific conditions.
And over here on the left, you see all these numbers. These tell us each individual moment. So if we wanted to know what did I do at the 33rd eye movement, we know exactly where it is, it's marked, and we can know all of its information, how long it took, all the details, and we can go along each one and make sure that I actually performed all 100. The reason why this is important is because on the average person per day, we do 100,000 of these a day. And if that is skewed in our environment, we're going to mismap where our targets are. And that's a huge factor to our balance and to us knowing where we are in space.
So you may be wondering, why is this important? Why we keep saying that it's important to us and it's a useful tool. How is this applicable clinically? If we're able to isolate, looking at this, for example, left versus right, if the right saccades, the right brain generating saccades aren't working as well as the left side, it's very clear to see we've got the data. The data can show us certain parts of the brain that aren't working well. Why is that important? Because as we've discussed previously, it's essential that we isolate the longitudinal level of the lesion, or in other words, where's the problem in the brain stem, the cerebellum. There's a lot that goes in, neurologically speaking, to a saccadic eye movement. So if we can pinpoint certain deficiencies or weaknesses on these graphs and with all the data that it gives us, we can isolate what part of the brain to treat and to perform therapies on. We can tell, for example, like a certain part of the brain called the substantia nigra. When there's problems there, That's the part of the brain that releases dopamine, for example. And we see that when there's decreased activity or weakness in that part of the brain, that's Parkinson's, very commonly, and we see movement disorders like that. That part of the brainstem is in charge of, or that part of the brain is in charge of firing over to inhibit certain other parts of the brain. So depending on what we see on these graphs, we can know exactly where the problem is and address specific conditions like Parkinson's. Again, not a diagnostic tool to diagnose Parkinson's, but we can see how this correlates with the other findings that we have. And just remember too, the important thing about this is one aspect of the exam. It's all we're doing is analyzing fast eye movements. So we take this along with the other parts of the exam that we do, like CAPS posturography that we've discussed before, and we're putting together pieces of a puzzle to create your story, what you're experiencing neurologically, and it really helps us to fix people. Thanks for joining us again today and letting us describe a little bit of what we do here in our clinic with regards to sacodometry. We're your hosts at the Neuro Clinic. I'm Dr. Casey Oliver.
And I'm Dr. John Hatch. Tune in with us next week and we'll talk more about what we can do to help.